Hello everyone, Ben Woodruff here with another Falconry video. In this video today, I'm going to be talking about how to properly tie nooses for trapping birds of prey. Now, let me preface this very clearly. I know this video is going out all over the world. It's the digital age. Wherever you see this video, if you have any interest in falconry or trapping birds of prey, make sure you do it legally. Be sure to be entirely familiar with the laws of the land in your area, and it's important that you do not attempt any of these techniques for three reasons: for the safety of the bird, for the safety of you, and for the legal safety of you. So do not attempt these techniques unless you know you're doing them legally. Now, why are we doing this? Why are we showing techniques on how to trap? The reason is that it's not just falconry. Falconry is the first one, right? Falconry traditionally was a way to get food with a trained bird of prey. And you don't want to keep a bird year-round because then they're eating food in the summer when they're growing new feathers. So it used to be a migrating bird. You trap, you train, you hunt with it together for several months, and then you set it free. The falconry laws in my area when I was a young falconer were you had to trap your first bird, and it had to be a first-year kestrel or a first-year red-tailed hawk. Now, the laws are quite a bit looser, and apprentice falconers in my area can even get captive bred birds. But this is not just a falconry technique. Biologists often need to know how to make this noose for this kind of trap. We have many instances where birds such as Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, kestrels, and merlins will be chasing sparrows and starlings around the back entrances of grocery stores and warehouses, and they open up the docking bay, and sparrows go in, and the hawk chases them. Now it's in the rafters. How do you get it? Very often, wildlife officers need this sort of a trap for this reason. You even have issues where aviaries and zoos will have birds escape for one reason or another and need to be safely recovered. This is a technique that is used for that reason. So the type of trap this noose is typically used on is called a ball chatri trap. I'm not showing how to make those, but you'll see one in this. Now, when I got into falconry, there was no published information that was good on how to make the nooses, and there wasn't any book on trapping, so I wrote one. If you go to Western Sporting online, you can buy a copy of my book. It's a how-to book on how to trap, how to build and use, and techniques with all kinds of different traps. But in this digital age, I want to try to show good nooses for people who are, for whatever reason, legally trying to trap a bird of prey. Now, the noose itself, I've seen dozens of different designs and a lot of different kinds that work. The noose I'm going to show you how to tie is one that I developed on my own. Now, I'm sure this design could have been done elsewhere, right? There's only so many types of nooses you can do. But I troubleshooted different ways, and my design evolved until this is what I typically use, and it works really well for me. Now, there's a lot of slip knot styles. Another style that I've seen, this is one from a trap that Western Sporting makes, a ball chatri you can make with pre-tied nooses, and these aren't actually tied if you look closely. These are reusable nooses. Now, the good thing about this kind of noose is that it can be used again and again. The bad thing is it doesn't trigger as easily as my noose, and it doesn't slide back open on its own if it doesn't snare the bird. But this is a solid industrial noose that can be used that I've really enjoyed next to the version that I'm going to show you today. When you are making nooses to put on a ball chatri trap, typically what is used nowadays is monofilament fishing line. Originally, it was horsehair, braided horsehair, coming out of India, was what the original ball chatri traps were used. But monofilament works very well. Now, over the years, I've tried a wide range of monofilament, of fishing line. There's some that are stiff and brittle. There's some that are very strong but very thin. There's some that are cheap. There's a wide range. And everybody has their personal preference. But you also have to consider the weight of the poundage, the strength. And that's a tricky one because you can buy high-end fishing line that's spider web thin, but is 50 pounds. Or you can buy cheap stuff that, this is only 3-pound test, but it's like practically like yarn. It's so thick. So that's a personal preference. For me, over the years, as I'm going to show you a couple things here, if you want to work with or against the curve. So this is kind of an important little technique here. When you unravel your fishing line from the spool, it has a built-in spring. It's almost like an extremely loose slinky. It's all the spiral, and you can fight against that or you can work with it. I like to work with it, but I'm going to show you the alternative. If you want to make sure you have straight line that's rigid, and then take your fishing line, put a couple of screws or a couple of nails in a 2x4, wrap them around that. Then put it in the oven, 150, 250 degrees for maybe 5 minutes. Then you pull it out, cut it off, and now you have perfectly rigid, straight, pre-made strands that you can tie into nooses. That works great, but I like to work with the curve. And I'm going to show you how to do this two ways. I'm going to show you first with rope, so you actually can look very closely at what knot I use, and then I'll show it with fishing line. And when you see the fishing line section, it's going to show how to work with this loopy-loop curve. So what I do is I take it end on end, and I tie a simple overhand knot. And then to make sure that I don't do this incorrectly, I pinch over the knot that I have done, flip it the other direction, and then I tie another overhand knot. Pay close attention to which side went over which side, otherwise this system doesn't work. Now what this effectively does is it makes like a mini tube, a very, very shallow one, but a mini tube for that to go through, for the other end to go through. Why this is good, let's take a look at doing this with fishing line. Same knot, same technique, but a little smaller. When you see how this actually works, the beauty of this system is that it will spring back open. That if it's bumped a little, it'll trigger easily, but it will spring back open. And if a hawk actually is caught, then it will stay nice and tight on the bird. Now also take a look that there's what I call a little bit of a tail from the knot. It's at least a good inch, maybe 1.25 inches out past from that knot. It's very important because this is a fairly loose system, and if you don't have that tail, it's easy for this to come unwoven. Again, pay attention to the size of the loop relative to my fingers. I have decent sized hands, so factor that in, but compared to my finger, my thumb in the video, if you make that little loop that we saw bigger than I showed you, it will tend to come apart. If you make it smaller than I showed in the video, it won't trigger as easily. But the next step is to attach our noose to our trap. And this is so crucial. A flat noose, a noose that's laying flat on the trap, is 100% worthless. You wasted your time. Why do that? So, first of all, along those lines, by the way, if you are like, okay, I gotta make this whole trap, I'm going trapping tomorrow, gotta do all these nooses, I don't know why, but assembly line style goes faster. So if you do what I just showed, tie that loop, set it aside, tie that loop, set it aside, tie that loop, and you have a pile of 30 of those, and then you tie 30 on, and then do 30 more, 30 more. That's better than tying one noose, looping it through, attaching it. For some reason, I've seen this with other falconers as well, if you do them one at a time, it takes a lot longer. Where if you just get in this muscle memory, make the first loop, and then tie them all on. It works better. So, when you are making a trap, typically we use what's called hardware cloth. I don't know who came up with that name. It's a stupid name because you hear hardware cloth, you think of fabric. But hardware cloth is a wire mesh. Now, everybody's familiar with chicken wire. The hardware cloth normally comes in two grades, 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. I love 1/2 inch, like this trap you're seeing. 1/2 inch has a very good bait visibility. So most rodents, if you're using gerbils or rats, this works really well. But the problem is most mice can get out of it. Even if you're like, there's no way, they will push their head through, and then they compress each set of ribs and blah, 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 and ooze their way out. So if you are using mice as bait in your secured trap, I recommend using the 1/4 inch, which is the smaller mesh. Otherwise, I say the 1/2 inch works really good. Okay, when we are going to attach this noose onto the trap, you want to tie at the cross. Okay, anywhere the 2 bars cross, that's where you tie it on to get the noose to stand up properly. Now, what I'll usually do is I will bend the tip that I'm about to put under. I'll give it a little bend so that it slides under more easily, and then I tie it. The knot that we tie is a square knot. It's just a simple square knot. And you have to tie it very tightly, and you have to leave 1 inch to 1.5 inch tail on the other end. So the original noose loop has a tail, and where you tie it onto the trap has a tail. These are crucial to make sure it will not come apart. Now, once you have that, you can adjust the noose to make sure you can pull it over a little. And since it's on a crossbar, it will follow your lead on where you're trying to angle it to be. Doing this allows you to have, again, a noose that is standing upright and will actually capture a bird. Again, remember, a noose that is laying flat is worthless and a waste of time. And if I don't do my knot correctly, and no matter how I adjust it, keeps laying flat, I cut it off. There's no point. Okay? I would rather have 5 upright nooses on a trap than 100 that are laying flat. That's just the reality of the situation. Now, remember, because there are different pound strengths of fishing line, again, like I earlier said, some of them are really thin but very strong. Some of them are thicker and weaker. Personal preference, it's up to you. I don't like trapping with anything under 20-pound test, just for safety. With kestrels, I'll go lighter. I've caught birds with 3-pound test, but the problem is if they're pulling on a trap, that reaction can break some of those smaller tests. So 15 to 25. But what I usually get is I'll get a 15 to 20-pound fishing line test, and I'll get cheap stuff that is chunky, thick, and that has that built-in spiral, and I will work with the spiral rather than using the oven straightening technique I showed you. And that way I can get, and each loop that you have is really the diameter that you want about your noose to expand to. So it's perfect. It'll just pop open to that size. But again, talk to an experienced trapper in your area. I have used as low as 80-pound test when I've done eagles, but everything else I usually do, again, 15 to 20 is my standard. And then if I'm doing a kestrel, I usually want something a little more delicate that will trigger a little bit more easily. So I hope this proves useful to you. I hope that, and again, put it in slow motion, go to the video with the rope to make sure you're getting the proper side over. When you make that initial double knot, make sure that it is the diameter that I showed, because if it's any bigger or smaller, it's either going to not trigger or it's going to come apart. And feel free, if you have any questions down below, let me know if you have any questions about trapping. And you can, again, if you want to find my book, to get more details and more illustrations on how to do some of this, go to Western Sporting Publications, and you can purchase it there. And but wish you luck on all your trapping adventures, and as always, happy hawking.